In order to subscribe for my channel, please click here or click here. Please like, share, and comments on my videos and channel. Thank you. Hey guys, this is Gaurav. Welcome to SaaS with ServiceNow. This is our follow-up session of ServiceNow Developer Training. Before I start, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Gaurav Tripathi. I have 9.5 years of experience in IT with 6.5 years of experience in ServiceNow Architect Solutions and Project Delivery. In this session, we are going to talk about business rules. Business rules are the really important functionalities in ServiceNow. I would say as a developer, you would definitely need multiple times this functionality. Your client or your customer can come up with different functionalities and you will always go for business rule. It's not something you will always go. I'm just telling you the situation. Mostly it happens that you will definitely create business rules because this is something which plays with the data, with your database. And that's the reason you need this business rules. What are we going to learn? We will talk about what is a business rule, how business rule work, creating a business rule, then scripting in business rule. This is what you are going to learn in this particular session. So once you will watch this session, you will be able to create and execute business rule in your ServiceNow system. And if your client, your customer has given any kind of requirement, and you can definitely decide whether that requirement should be fulfilled by business rules or client scripts, that you can take the decision. So till now we have created client scripts and UI policy. Those were related to client side scripting. But now we're talking about server side scripting. That means now you can decide, once you will watch this session, then you will be able to decide whether you have to write client script, whether you have to write UI policy, whether you have to write business rule. Business rule. Now, the first question when we talk about business rule is, what is a business rule? And that is the really important thing to know. So the server side script that runs when record is displayed, inserted, or deleted, or updated, or when label is queried. This is what business rule is. It's kind of a script which runs when these operations happens. So whenever you are inserting, updating, deleting, or you are hitting the table or hitting the database, in those conditions, in those operations, if you want some actions to be taken, in that case, you will use business rule because this script run during that time. It is used to change values in the fields when specific condition is met. So if you want to change some value while inserting the data, while updating the data, while deleting the data, or maybe if you're querying, you want to do some action, in that case, you will use business rule. The important point is it runs on server side. As we talked about earlier, UI policy and client scripts, they run on client side, but here this run on server side. It runs with all the ways where record is accessed like list, form, or web services. Now what it means, if you are updating the data from list view, or you are updating the data from form view, or you are updating the data from web services, or maybe you are creating the data, you are inserting the data, or you are updating the data from web services or deleting the data, in that case, business rule will definitely run. Locate business rule. Now, how you will find out this business rules in your ServiceNow system? So under system definition application menu, you have a module called business rules. Once you will click on that business rules module, you will see the list of business rules created in your ServiceNow system. If you have just bought or just have a new instance, then you will see all the baseline or out of the box business rules which have been created by ServiceNow. Business rule form. Now, before creating business rule, it is really important to know what all fields it has. Because without knowing the business rule form and field, you will not be able to create it. that what field is required when. So the first field we have is name of the business rule, and that's a name field. So if you are creating a business rule and you want to recognize, then you can use the name field and you can put the name. And just to give you a suggestion, if you are working in your organization, whenever you create client script, UI policy, because you already have baseline business rules or these functionalities from ServiceNow, I would recommend you to always start the prefix with your organization's name. Whatever organization name you have, just put it as kind of the acronyms in the beginning as a prefix, so that you can recognize in the future that which one is out of the box and which one is created or customized by your team. That's what you can recognize. So the next is table. Now table field where you want to run this business rule. So we have multiple tables in ServiceNow, like incident, change, problem. Now you want to perform that operation, you want to take some action on incident table, then you can use and you can select incident table here, or any table you want where you want to run the business rule or you want to run that logic which you are looking for or which your client has given. Then you have application. This is just a scope of the application. As of now, it's global. So for example, if you have any customized scope, then it will just run in that scope. But as of now, it is showing global scope, or it shows you which scope you are in. Then you have this active and inactive business rule. That means this checkbox tells you whether you want to activate this business rule or deactivate this. So if this checkbox is checked, that means it's active. It's not checked, it's not active. Then we have advanced. This just enables the advanced sections, advanced functionality with scripting. So if you want to do scripting in business rule, then you have to enable this particular functionality by checking this box. Now, this is the really important section of business rule. And I say the business rule form as well. And that is trigger of business rule. Now, your business rule will not run every time. You have to define some conditions. It might run every time, but if you will put some conditions that it might not. So this is the trigger point of business rule. And that's the reason the section's name is when to run. So that as a developer, you can define when exactly you want to trigger this business rule. So the field we have here is insert or update. So when to trigger, on update or an insert. So if any user is inserting the data, do you want to take some action? If user is updating the data, do you want to take some action? In that case, you can run this business rule. Now, the important point here is if you will select the table, for example, incident, and if you are selecting insert, in that case, and you are just saving this business rule, then please remember it will run that business rule every time. And don't think that if you're not putting any action, that means even if you're not putting any action, and if you are just running this business rule, then you are taking some or you're degrading the performance of your system because you are utilizing some resource because business rule will also take some time to run. So that's what we have. This is the operation where you can select what kind of operation you want. When, that's what you selected here. So if user inserts some data or user updates some data or maybe both, so you can select both. Then you have filter conditions. That means condition after insert or update operation. So if you are inserting the data, but you don't want to run this business rule every time. You want if the state is maybe new or maybe short description is not empty. These are some conditions and this will be decided as per the requirement you have from your customers. Then we have role conditions. Now here you decide the role of the user who generates that event basically. So user should have that mentioned role. So if there's a business rule which is specifically for particular role, and if the logged in user does not have that role, then you will not run this rule. Then we have actions. So we talked about as of now when to run the business rule. Now once you have decided when to run and that condition has met, now what exactly it should do, that you will decide with actions. And out of the box we have the set field values, add messages, and then abort action. So the first field we have is set field values. As of now you're not able to see what values you can select. It will be visible once you will select the table. Then you will see more option, you can see the list of fields, and you can also select the values, what value you want to put. Then we have add message. This is something message to be populated during the action. If you want to show a message to the user while he's doing that action, maybe he's updating the data and the condition has been met, and you want to show something. In that case, you can check this box. It will open, it will show a new field, and there you can mention the message you want to display to the user. Then we have abort action. Now, this is the really important feature of ServiceNow platform via business rule. Now, you can't you must have some conditions where you can't allow every user to take some action every time without some maybe data validation. In that case, you can do this abort action. Just to give you an example, that if you have incident table or maybe any other table which are saving some records, maybe employee name. Now what if user is filling their data and they are using the employee number similar which is already there in the record? So you want to stop the user that, hey, it seems like this number is already there in the system, so you have to select the another employee number. In that case, you can abort the action of the user. So user is opening the form, filling up the data, but he has selected some same number. He's hitting the submit button. Once he's hitting the submit button, it will check, is it meeting the condition? Yes. That means that number is similar. In that case, you can abort the action and user will not be able to create the record at that particular time. He has to open the form again and create the record again. Then we have this advanced checkbox. So as I mentioned, when you check this checkbox, it opens up the new functionalities, some hidden functionalities, and also give you the opportunity to do scripting in business rule. So we have this when, order, delete, query. These fields, if you remember, they were not visible in the first go when this advanced checkbox was not checked. But now it is checked, so you can see these new fields. And if I talk about these fields, the first option we have is when. Now, as we already saw, the oral section is when to run. Now, this is also really important field, that when exactly you want to run this business rule. And that says the features, the function choices we have are before, after, async, and display. These are the choices. And as per your requirement, that when exactly you want to run this business rule, you can select these options in when. The next field we have is order. It just does sequencing for running the business rule. So if you have like multiple business rules and you want to run those business rules with some sequence, and you don't want all the business rules to run every time, then you can select this order. Then you have delete the record. Now this is similar as we had insert, update. They are the operations like database operations. So similarly, you have this delete because user might select delete because they might delete the record as well. In that case, you can put this, and if user is deleting a record and you want some action to be taken, then you can select this particular field. And you want all of them, then you can select all of them. Then you have query. Now, if you click on a module which shows you the list of incidents, it's similar the query you are doing. So what if you want some kind of a check when user is querying the data? In that case, you can utilize this query. As an example, if I click on incident and I don't want some specific users to see all the data, in that case, you can put the query and you can put the condition. That's what you can do here. Or maybe you can put some action as well. Whenever I am hitting the data, whenever I am querying it, maybe I see a message. It's totally up to you as per the condition, as per the requirement you have. And the last section, which is automatically enabled when you check this box, advanced checkbox, is scripting. And it will have two fields. One is condition and then script. In condition, it's similar to the script condition you have to mention here. Maybe whatever condition you have, that's what you can mention here. And then you can write the script in the script field. Now, as you learned about how this business rule forms looks like, how fields work, what are their usage. Now, the next topic is really important to learn, that how business rule work, how exactly they get executed. As you saw some of the sections like when to run, it's quite similar. And then what action that business rule has to take, it's quite similar, that how exactly it works. But I will explain you a little bit in details. So the first thing is we put when to run. So when whatever conditions you have put in when, that's what it checks. That do I need to run that business rule right now, or have I met the condition yet? That's what it will check as per the operation. So first, if you have checked the insert operation, for example, first it will check the operation. Once it is checked, it will see, okay, I have inserted the record. It seems like there is a business rule which is written on insert on the same table. I will check what is the condition, and that is when to run. Once that condition has been met, it will check what action I need to take. Once that action is checked, then it takes that action in that particular table. And that's how your process works. Starting from the operation to when to run, and then action is taken. So the first is trigger point. So you are triggering the event and that business rule as per the operation user is taking. Then you have action. It checks what action I need to take. Once it is decided, yes, that action I need to take, then it takes that action, and that is action taken on that particular table. So this is how business rules work. Let's talk more about when to run business rule. So as you saw, there's a functionality when you check that advanced checkbox. It shows you a field called when, which decides or which checks the timing of running of the business rule, that when exactly this business rule should run. So as per your requirement, that's what you decide, whether it should run after, whether it should run before, whether it should run async, or whether it should run display business rule. So let's start with after business rule. Now, after business rule execute after form submission, when form is submitted and record is updated in the database. So if you are an end user and you are creating a record, You have opened the form, submitting the incident. Once that incident is created, then this particular business rule will run. That's called a timing of this particular business rule. As an example, if you want to copy some fields from parent to child after insertion, after the data is inserted into ServiceNow, record is inserted in ServiceNow incident table, and you want to copy, in that case, you can use after business rule. Before business rule. Before business rules execute when form is submitted, but before record is updated in the database. Now, that's a difference between after and before. So when form is submitted, form will be, we will be user will be submitting the form, but that action which we want to take, we want before creating it. And it's similar like a bot, that you want to check something before it gets inserted. So if I'm filling up the fields in ServiceNow incident, but I want some validation, and if that validation does not met, then I am aborting some action. Or even it's not meeting, I am putting an alert for the user. That is what it does. So before creating or updating the record in the database, you want to have some action, that's what you utilize before business rules. It's similarly like that if you are creating an incident and you want to auto populate any incident. For example, I can give you the right example like opened by. Ideally from ServiceNow, open by is already there, so you don't have to do it, but I'm just giving an example. If you have some other field, maybe for example reported by, you have a field on your ServiceNow incident form that's reported by, and as an end user, when you are submitting it, and like you'll be happy if you will see your name automatically. So when I'm filling the data, I'm clicking submitting the field, it will automatically show my name over there. It's just an example. Ideally, you will always ask user to fill that data. But if user is not filling the data, then you can put himself or herself. That's what you can do with the help of business rule. Then you have async business rule. Now this is also another kind of business rule. Now, this business rule runs after records are inserted, modified, or queried. So it's like scheduled jobs basically. It runs asynchronously. So it doesn't have that synchronous job. It's like a scheduled jobs. And where exactly you can utilize it, like when exactly you will decide, okay, I should write asynchronous business rule. So maybe if you want to notify some users when CIs are affected by any incident, in that case you can write async business rule. Or maybe you want to do some SLA calculations. It's similar like a scheduled job. So in that case, you can write async business rule. But mostly, if I say, you are mostly write before or after business rule in ServiceNow as a developer. But you would definitely get the requirement for async business rule as well. And then we have display business rule. Now, display business rule runs when data is read from the database and before presenting to the user. So if you are creating or inserting a incident, if you are creating an incident and you want something to be like read from the database, in that case you can use display business rules. Now display business rules is mostly used with g underscore scratchpad. That's a different global object. It's a variable which is used in business rules. And why exactly use it? Because if you want to populate or fetch some data from the server to the client side, in that case you use g underscore scratchpad. What operation? So as we learned about when exactly you are going to run business rule as per the timings before, after async or display business rule. But you also need to decide that in what operation that business rule will run, that what kind of operation is user is taking, and then you have to decide that okay, in this particular operation I will run that business rule. So maybe if user is inserting the data, that means insert, updating the data, update, deleting the data, delete, or querying. These are the four operations which user will take, and then you will decide okay, this kind of condition should met and run the business rule. So if you want to display a message every time user insert an incident, in that case you will just select the insert and you will populate the message. So it will run every time on incident table. Now practically I will show you some examples, but these are the operations. And I will show you each and every example for when and what operation both, how exactly they work. Basically, I will show you by changing all the different fields we have in business rule and their functionality practically in ServiceNow. Global variables of business rule. Now, ServiceNow provides some declared global variables, and those are current, previous, G underscore scratchpad, and GS. That is glide system. Now, current is something which stores the current record fields and values. That's what it stores. Previous, if you are changing the data, if you're updating the data and you want to fetch the old values, that it will be saved in previous. And then we have G underscore scratchpad. If you remember, we already talked about this in display business rule. So if you want to fetch some value or field value from database, from server end on a client, in that case, you can use G underscore scratchpad. And then you have GS. Now GS has a lot of methods which you can utilize. That I will show you in my practical session.